The Chicago White Sox are the worst team in baseball, and you wouldn't really know anything about that unless you're a Sox fan, because I promise you, no one else is even giving them a second thought. Now, I'm not making a video on the White Sox because they're terrible. If I were, I'd have to make this an annual thing. No, the reason the Sox are getting their own video is because this team will go down as the worst in MLB history. You thought the 1962 Mets were bad? Or that the 2003 Detroit Tigers played like the Bad News Bears? Hell, if you're a real baseball knower, you would have thought this team probably would have stood a chance against the 1916 Philadelphia Athletics. Well, you're wrong, because the 2024 White Sox are gonna reach 100 losses before they get to 30 wins. If I were a betting man, I would have put my money on Mike Trout lasting an entire season without getting a major injury before I would have had the White Sox, losing 100 games before they win 30. That's a ridiculous number. Their winning percentage is the lowest all time. You can go back 100, 200 years. You're not seeing something like what the White Sox are doing right now. And there are a multitude of reasons for this, and I will get into them. But if you thought things couldn't get worse for the White Sox, you're absolutely wrong, because what happened just a few days ago? The newly hired manager, Pedro Grifol, was just recently dismissed, or rather fired the other day. And you have to remember, this organization gave him the job on November 3rd of 2022. He didn't even last 2 full years before they gave up on him. And it gets even more embarrassing for the organization when you realize who they chose to replace him with. You might have thought their bench coach, Charlie Montoya, would be a suitable option as interim manager for the rest of the year. Or hell, even their third base coach, Eddie Rodriguez, would work out. You could even throw their assistant hitting coach, Mike Tauser, into the mix. Well, if you guessed any 3 of those men as the next interim coach for the White Sox, you'd be right, because they decided to name all 3 of them as the next interim coaches for interim managers for the White Sox for the remainder of the 2024 season. It just feels like they find a new way to reach rock bottom every other week. And we'll get more into Grifol's firing and the Chicago White Sox being absolutely miserable in a second, but for right now, I just wanted to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers, and every subscription is greatly appreciated. Alright, now let's get back to talking about these White Sox. Now, you could choose to believe the senior VP, their GM, whatever silly little title that Reinsdorf wants to slap on Chris Getz. You can believe Getz as to why they chose to fire Grifol. He says that it's because there were different belief systems, there was a lack of production overall, which was true. The White Sox might not be the most talented team in the world, but they do have some stars on the roster, if that's what you want to call them, and they just haven't been showing up. In fact, the White Sox best players have been having some of the worst seasons of their career, statistically or with the eye test, okay? And then, Getz also goes on to say that the team has led very early in a lot of games and just weren't able to close. +1, Getz, another point. That's also true. But where I believe Getz is starting to fit, or at least tell a little bit of a white lie, is when he says that they want to finish this season with more positives than they've had so far, which isn't hard to do, but that they're determined to have success. See, this is where I think that, he's lying. No way are you going to tell me that Getz or the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, is trying to win with this White Sox team. He hasn't been trying to spend any of his billions of dollars on this team since the 80s when he purchased it. You had that one miracle run under Reinsdorf where they win the World Series, but let me tell you, the White Sox have been irrelevant for the most part since Jerry became the owner for them. He spends some of the littlest amount of money in all of baseball. I've seen this with my own team. I'm an Oakland A's fan. No one's cheaper than Fisher. Well, Reinsdorf might be a close second, because when it comes to his track record on spending big money on free agents, it's pretty non-existent. And it's not like Chicago's some small market team like Milwaukee or Green Bay. No, players want to come and play in Chicago. 3rd biggest market in all of the United States behind what? Los Angeles and New York. And Chicago's a beautiful city. I mean, you've got the Bean, Portillo's. What else do you need, right? Deep dish. Soldier Field is nice to look at, not so nice to spend your time in, but Chicago has a bunch of things to do in the city. It's honestly great. I mean, they turn their rivers and lakes green on St. Paddy's Day. That's cool. But anyway, besides the point, right? I mean, there was an opportunity in not so long ago where Bryce Harper was a free agent, $27 million AAV, and did Reinsdorf decide to pull out his checkbook? No. He decided that instead of putting the team over the edge with a Bryce Harper when he was in free agency, he wasn't going to spend the money. And they could have been true contenders with Harper. Instead, the Phillies got him, and they've prospered with him. Have they won a World Series? No, but they've been there. And guess what? Reinsdorf would still have to spend that money eventually, but instead of getting a Bryce Harper, he would end up with an Andrew Benintendi 4 years later, this time for $17 million AAV. He signed a 5-year, $75 million contract. He is stuck on the White Sox till 2027, but let me tell you right now, he's not making it that long. And what did the White Sox get out of Benintendi for the last year and a half? The worst version of him. Unlike the Red Sox, who ended up with a Rookie of the Year candidate and World Series winner, or the Kansas City Royals, who got a Gold Glover and All-Star, no. The White Sox get the worst version of Benintendi. Or maybe they bring out the worst version of Benintendi. And I know I've talked a lot about Pedro Grifol, but he wasn't brought onto the White Sox to be this miracle manager that was going to save them from the hell that Reinsdorf put him in. No. Grifol was brought on to the White Sox to kiss the ass of Jerry Reinsdorf. Everybody in the building knew that Grifol lost his job months ago, and yet only a few days before he was fired, he was seen talking to the media saying that Reinsdorf was a competitor. He wasn't trying to lose. He is a winner, and he's not content with where they're at right now. Bullshit. That's what I call. And let me tell you, Reinsdorf knows nothing about picking a manager. I mean, before him, who did they got? Tony La Russa, his old buddy, an aging, retired legend. Okay, no offense to Tony La Russa. What he did previously, before this stint with the White Sox, truly remarkable. But he has a beautiful send-off with the Cardinals, and then Reinsdorf deciding to pull his old buddy out of retirement was the worst decision he could have made for the both of them. I mean, La Russa, while he was great in his time, had been out of the majors for a decade plus, and his play style was a bit archaic and clashed with the youth movement that Chicago had been building for several years leading up to that. I mean, you've got a rising star in Tim Anderson who is taking over the league, a potential face of Major League Baseball. And who drove him out of Chicago? Ding, ding, ding. If your answer was Tony La Russa, you're correct. And let's not even get into the way he mismanaged his starting pitchers and his bullpen. Far worse than his predecessor, Ricky. I mean, we all know about Ricky. We don't even want to get into him. But he also embarrassed the organization a countless number of times. Tony La Russa did in his second stint with the White Sox. The way he intentionally walked multiple batters who were already down 2 strikes in the count and even started nodding off during a game in the dugout. I mean, La Russa was too old to be there, and then of course he had to leave the team due to health issues. I hope that he gets better, right? And he was a legend. But his stint in Chicago recently could go better off forgetting. Anyway, that's enough about my Chicago White Sox rant. This organization is a mess. Let's hope that Reinsdorf sells, because every decision he makes for the White Sox is not to benefit the team. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not trying to win. Catch y'all later, though. Much love. Deuces. 'Cause I wanna know.